Quick listen.
They came after a lot of people, like me, but they came after a lot of people. No, I wasn't involved in it. I'll have to see what is exactly going on after this is finished. But if they fired some people over there, that's a good thing, because they were very bad. They were very corrupt people, very corrupt, and they hurt our country very badly with the weaponization.
There's just so much I personally want to unpack on that and unload on that right now, but you're our guest. I'm going to give you the chance to do that. But the reality of it is Trump said that, oh, I had no idea about these firings. I didn't request any of these firings. Can we just cut the crap? Because the FBI is not going to fire anybody at that scale without the White House knowing about it. What are you hearing about this process, the scope and the review of those people who are being let go, and what are their options?
Yeah, I spoke with one of the January 6th prosecutors who was fired just yesterday, last night, and they were saying they stand by what they did. And I think that what you got to remember here is he likes to talk in these generalities, right? In terms of like, oh, they went after people. This was corrupt. And let's actually get into the details of these cases. These were cases against violent offenders who assaulted law enforcement officers on the steps of the U.S. Capitol.
There you go.
Right, like right outside, right? So it's not as though you can say like, oh, we're going after this specific person because we didn't like how they applied this particular misdemeanor. No, they're going after everyone. This was not like an individualized assessment of their conduct. This was just anybody who worked on January 6 cases who they could fire, they did. And that basically they focused on those people who were in these term positions. Basically, there was an authorization for these term positions, which were supposed to be sort of 2 years. The expectation was that a lot of these people would continue on. So basically what you're going to have Monday is that people who were working on these January 6 cases and then had been moved to some other kind of crime, right? So like violent crime in D.C., supposed to be a focus of the Trump administration. That's what they were supposed to be doing. But they went through this training. They were supposed to show up Monday and start prosecuting these violent crime cases, and that's it.
Can I just follow up on this? Because first of all, I just think this is the second time that on a Friday evening, multiple officials from the Justice Department have been fired. And in the letter that they receive about why they're being fired, it says explicitly because of your cases you worked on January 6th, and that you do not align with the president's agenda. That's why they're being fired. But these individuals were moved to be permanent employees before the end of the Biden administration. So these folks are not even, there's legal questions about if what is currently happening is legal for these individuals, right?
Yeah, they're still in their probationary period, which is why they were sort of targeted. So that like allows a little bit more flexibility to go after them. If they had gotten out of the probationary period, this would be a whole different ball game. But because of that probationary period, I think there's questions about whether this is authorized or not. I think it's the is this legal versus is this ethical sort of question.
Okay, I want to underline something that you said, though, because the fact that this is tied to January 6th makes it seem retrospective, when in reality, to your point, these people have jobs and cases that they are working on now in the national security. That was echoed by the FBI Agents Association statement, where they said dismissing potentially hundreds of agents would severely weaken the Bureau's ability to protect the country from national security and criminal threats, and will ultimately risk setting up the Bureau and its new leadership to fail. What does that mean?
Yeah, I mean, the brain drain at the FBI would be extraordinary. And I think that, like,
it already with the firings they have already effectuated, with the threats they have already made. If law enforcement officials and agents have their careers threatened, which they have now all had their careers threatened, and indeed if they are fired, and they indeed are already starting to be fired, if they have their careers threatened and are fired because they took part in lawfully predicated criminal investigations, where grand juries handed down indictments, where judges signed search warrants, where juries returned convictions, if they nevertheless are fired for taking part in those lawful, proper criminal law enforcement actions because the president in power now doesn't like those cases, that is not Nixon. That is not a president trying to get out of an investigation he's scared of for himself. That is the end of independent law enforcement as a core value of who we are as a country, right? That's an end to the idea that law enforcement pursues justice without regard to favors and preferences dictated by the people in power. Here's how the New York Times puts it tonight, quote, if the administration follows through, It would be a singular moment in the FBI's history, and it would fly in the face of decades worth of civil service laws that are meant to protect the integrity and professionalism of federal law enforcement. And those are very pretty words and nice concepts, and that means they all blur together and seem just kind of like Americana. Let's be more blunt about it. If you lose those things, if you lose the independence and professionalism of federal law enforcement, what that means is we are rewiring the FBI and federal prosecutors so they will now, henceforth, only do arrests and searches and investigations and prosecutions that please the president, regardless of who it is that's committing crimes. These firings, which are now underway, are changing one of the fundamental things that makes us the kind of country that we are. This is very bad. Jamie Raskin, Democratic congressman and professor of constitutional law, told the Washington Post tonight this. He said, quote, "If allowed to proceed, Trump's purge of our federal law enforcement workforce will expose America to authoritarianism and dictatorship." What they are trying to do tonight is not trying to stop an active investigation. Tonight, they are seeking revenge for law enforcement personnel who participated in a previous investigation that is now over. And the reason that is worse is because the point of what they are doing tonight is to permanently, irrevocably change law enforcement in the United States of America, to make it so FBI agents and prosecutors just won't, in the future, pursue criminal investigations and criminal cases if the suspected criminals in those cases are associated with the president and this movement that supports him. They are trying to not get rid of an investigation. They're trying to get rid of American law enforcement as we know it. They are trying to get rid of the very idea of an independent, justice-is-blind system that makes America who we are. This is not the Saturday Night Massacre. This is considerably worse, and it is hard to see how what happens tonight can be corrected, can be undone, the way the Saturday Night Massacre was undone within 12 days. This is a really serious thing. Now, before tonight, they had already fired prosecutors who had worked on the special counsel's investigation that brought charges against President Trump. The charges for the alleged hoarding and mishandling of classified documents, charges for illegally trying to overthrow the results of the 2020 presidential election. They already fired prosecutors involved with those investigations. What they are doing tonight is apparently attempting a mass purge of prosecutors who worked on all the other January 6th cases, the ones just involving rioters who attacked the Capitol building on Trump's behalf. Tonight, approximately 30 prosecutors who worked on January 6th rioter prosecutions have all been fired. Beyond that, they appear to be in the midst of a mass purge at the FBI. At least a half dozen senior leaders of the FBI have already been told to resign or be fired on Monday. Beyond that senior leadership, though, they're also trying to remove just normal FBI line agents, potentially hundreds or even thousands of them. Now, as I mentioned at the top of the hour, this is still an emerging story. Details may yet evolve as this story develops and we learn more. My best understanding of what has happened thus far is this. And if I stand corrected by the end of this hour, I will not be surprised. But this is what I understand what I understand to have happened just thus far. In an instruction that appears to have originated at the White House, Trump's hand-picked acting officials at the Justice Department directed FBI headquarters to hand over internal files from the Jack Smith cases, from the Trump classified documents case, from the Trump overthrow the election case. They were told, the FBI headquarters was told to hand over those files so a list could be made of all FBI line agents and FBI supervisors who were involved in those cases in any way. So personnel action could be taken against those FBI personnel. So they could be punished, removed, reassigned, or fired. The Washington Post reports tonight that FBI supervisors advised agents that any agents who worked on either of those two cases, the Jack Smith cases, FBI supervisors reportedly advised agents that they should be prepared for the Trump administration to release to the public the names of the FBI agents who worked on those cases before they would then be fired on Monday. So rather than just firing them, they were basically going to tell, Trump supporters, including those who were just let out of prison by Donald Trump, tell them, hey, here's the names of FBI agents who were part of all the January 6th investigations, the ones that targeted Trump. Don't worry, though, they're no longer agents. We're firing them today, so go ahead and have at them. Now, tonight, MSNBC's Ryan Riley has obtained a memo sent by the acting director of the FBI to all FBI personnel. And it would seem to indicate that even beyond those things that I have just described, beyond the prosecutors who did the 2 Trump cases, beyond FBI personnel at the senior levels of the FBI, beyond FBI personnel involved in the 2 Trump cases, what Ryan Riley has obtained tonight, this letter from the acting FBI director to all FBI personnel, would seem to indicate that they are planning a massive purge beyond that.
What you're seeing here, right? What you're seeing here is that Donald knows he screwed up, and he is trying to backtrack because he regrets it. And this is what Trump does. He never apologizes. But when he's proud of a truly awful thing he does, even though we and all reasonable people in the world understand it was monstrous, he'll just double, triple, quadruple down for years. Like how he's doubled, tripled, quadrupled down over defending the J6 rioters, or his big lie, or for years his comments about Obama's citizenship, all of that, right? No shame. And yet here, like when a worker quits on him and drops a bombshell, he says, oh, I don't know who they were. They got me coffee 1 or 2 times. I think their name was Joe. But clearly the person was like a top aide. Like he pretended not to remember Michael Cohen for a long time, right? Like absolutely absurd. And he's doing the same thing here where effectively he's saying, oh, I had nothing to do with these firings. I had nothing to do with them. Just a coincidence that it happened a couple days after I was president. Nothing to do with them. Do you know why he's abrogating responsibility? Because he knows that it looks bad and the public reaction to it has been worse than expected. That's why. Because your rage and your concern for democracy and the rule of law and public order and all of that was so loud that even Trump had to say, wait, my newest fascistic move was really unpopular, and I have to deny that I had anything to do with it.